The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Friday, the 18th of March, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,255.09 an ounce, silver $15.79 an ounce, Texas crude $40.20 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 409 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1314, Jacques de Molay, the 23rd and last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, is burned at the stake at a scaffold in front of Notre Dame by decree of the cardinals and in conjunction with the Archbishop of Sens and some other prelates who were called in. Templar Grand Masters de Molay and Charnay were slowly burned to death for refusing to recant their heretical beliefs. Today in history. In recent news, Salah Abdeslam, Europe's most wanted man for being suspected of physically partaking in the Paris Islamic State shootings November of last year, was captured today after a shootout in Brussels. This capture finally giving investigators the first suspected active participant to be taken alive. Prosecutors said a second wanted man, who used the false name of Amin Chakouri, was also wounded and captured in the raid. Luckily, French President Francois Hollande was visiting Brussels for a European summit and was able to personally conduct a joint news conference with the Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel, where he said that France would request very soon the extradition of Salah Abdeslam. Security services will obviously be seeking information on Islamic State plans and structures, his contacts in Europe and in Syria, and looking into his support and financial networks. Police did obtain Abdesam's fingerprints as well as fake Syrian and Belgian identity documents. Radar scans of King Tut's burial chamber have revealed two hidden compartments. Yesterday, at a Cairo news conference, Egyptian Antiquities Minister Momdo Al-Damadi declined to comment on whether any royal treasure or more mummies might be inside of the rooms, but did state that the unexplored chambers could hold some kind of organic or metal objects. He also showed the results of the radar scans that revealed anomalies in the walls of the tomb, indicating a possible hidden door and rooms behind false walls that were covered up and painted over with hieroglyphics. The radar scans of the chamber taken last year and analyzed in Japan are set to be repeated at the end of the month for verification. The Lone Star Lowdown is currently looking to fill some ad slots. If you have a product or a service that you would like to advertise with us, feel free to give me a call at 210-363-2257. This has been Rick Rohde with your Lowdown for March 18th, 2016.
You gonna do? Yeah. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? When you were 8 and you had bad treats, you go to school and learn the golden rule. So why are you acting like a bloody fool? If you get hot, then you must get cool. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? You chuck it on that one, you chuck it on this one, you chuck it on your mother and you chuck it on your father, you chuck it on your brother and you chuck it on your sister, you chuck it on that one and you chuck it on me. Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, on this Friday, the 18th day of March, 2016. Can it be that we are already a quarter of the way through another year? That's kind of scary. And we're here, and spring is beginning to spring, something like that. We've just gotten through the winter that never was. January and February of this year were the hottest January and February months ever in recorded history. So it looks like we're in for global warming. But then again, there is the Younger Dryas. We are at the coldest point we have been for 11,000 years, in spite of what Al Gore might want to tell us. So we'll have some global warming for the next 250 years, no matter what. Anyway, enough of global warming for tonight. Tonight, we're going to have a very special guest on, Mr. Michael Badnarik, who I believe it was 2004 that he ran for president on the Libertarian ticket and made some pretty serious waves, and I may get him to reminisce about a little of those. And he also has moved back to Texas from Indiana, and he's in Austin, and we'll start doing his Constitution classes again, which were always very well received. I hope we can get some folks to go to them. And tonight, I'll have have Michael talk about his Constitution class, and then we're going to lead from that into some of the things that we have been talking about in terms of methods to encourage our public officials back from their wayward ways back toward Constitution. But before I get to that, we are going to extend our fundraiser where it hasn't done as well as we need it to be able to keep this thing on there. We're going to just extend it to the end of March, and we're going to have to end it regardless. You might have noticed we weren't here yesterday, and that's because we've had some technical difficulties lately, and you may have noticed some of our equipment has went down, and we're having to replace some rather costly equipment in order to keep this thing going. And the show's not bringing in as much as we would like, but then we're really not so much of a commercial show as you all may notice, that when we do get on the show and do the commercial side, we really struggle with it because it's really not what we're about. It's just something that we have to do. So if you find value from the show, if you take value from it, it would be greatly appreciated if you would send a little bit of value back. It doesn't take a lot. If every one of our listeners sent us $10, we'd be in good shape, because most of us who do these shows, we don't get paid for it. Actually, most of us pay into the show. I put quite a bit of money into the show every month, and most of the other broadcasters do as well. And we're dedicated. We're here for a purpose. We're certainly not here to make money. We're here to provide value. One day we'll all get old, and we'll look back on our lives and we'll say, what did we do that made our lives of value? And when I get old and look back, I'll get to say that this radio show was something I did for the purpose of giving back value. And if I've given value to some people and helped them along the way, that will be a good thing. Yes, as we get older, we tend to remember all of our failures and weaknesses. Dr. Veith was on the show, and he spoke about how getting older was learning to cope with loss and regret. And we get older, we look back with regret on our mistakes. But on occasion, there are some things we get to look back on and say, well, yeah, I made some mistakes, but I gave back, and the show was one of them. But we do have to ask for a little, and we are asking for a little. So if you have a couple bucks extra, we'd certainly appreciate it. And whatever you do, don't forget about Randy's Beer Fund. Okay, we really don't have a Randy's Beer Fund. But go to Logos Radio Network and look at our sponsors. We've got a number of sponsors there. And for the most part, our sponsors don't pay us monthly. They pay us based on what you buy from them. So if they have products you can use, especially look at Jurisdictionary, Eddie's Traffic Seminar, and if you have credit issues, we have Michael Morris. Michael Morris. Anyway, look at all of our sponsors. We've got a number of sponsors that have really valuable products that if you can use them, it would help us along. We have Michael Van Erich with us. Hello, Michael.
Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm going to stop the shameless promotion. And we're going to ask Michael to do some shameless self-promotion. I understand you're back in Austin.
Yeehaw. Thank goodness. I've been away for way too long.
Yes. I've traveled all over the world, and I tell everybody, Austin is my favorite place on earth. It's because of the people. So I'm glad you're in Austin. I think Austin will benefit from you being there. And talk to us about what you've been doing, and especially want to hear about your Constitution class.
Well, I took about 5 years to go back to Indiana, take care of mom and dad, working as a caregiver. And now I'm back in Texas. I'm able to kind of get my life together. And anybody who's been watching the presidential debates, Republican or Democrat, I mean, they're just a joke. And people are starting to ask. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? What does the Constitution actually say? And so I'm gaining a whole lot of, popularity after the fact, now that people are starting to worry. And I'm in Austin. I'll be teaching my Constitution class as often as I possibly can. There's a class in Austin on March 26th, in Chicago, April 2nd, and then in San Antonio on Friday, April 8th. That's just before the Libertarian State Convention. So if you would like a Constitution class in your town, all you have to do is call me. I will travel out. We'll get it organized, and it's really helpful to know what the Constitution actually says, why it was written in the first place, and what the founding fathers meant, when they were putting that thing together. So I've also been asking my students for commentary at the end of the class. And if you go to my website, constitutionpreservation.org, you can go to the Start Here menu and find a calendar for all the places that I have taught or will be teaching. And for all the classes that are in the past, I have commentary from the students. And I ask them to rate the class from 1 to 5 stars, with 5 being, wonderful and terrific. And after 6 classes, I have a unanimous 5-star rating. I haven't had a single student rate me less than 5. So it's pretty dynamic, very interactive. Randy can confirm that I get very animated and energetic whenever I'm talking about liberty, and it's contagious. So if you want me to teach my class in your town, give me a call. If you want to take it someplace where we're already teaching it, just call me and let me know that you're going to be there. It's very, very simple.
Yes, I've been to his class, and he does get animated, and sometimes I'm glad he doesn't bring the 45 with him. Michael is a very strong advocate of the right to carry. And just so you know, we now have right to open carry in Texas. I am certainly hoping that a lot of people take advantage of that. Because I've been in places where there was open carry. And it wasn't a combat zone, but the level of aggression amongst the population of military personnel where everybody was armed to the teeth, it was somewhere between 0 and nothing. So all of these people who complain about guns, it's my position that if everybody was armed, guns would be meaningless, except for someone coming in from the outside. The first time we had this attack we had in Sandy Hook, when that happened, we had all of the liberals jumping up and say, we need to get gun control. And the American public jumped up and said, no, we need to arm the teachers. We need to arm everybody. And the vast majority of the people said that every time there's one of these attacks, those people out there who are actually thinking about these things, they all say, arm everybody. Don't take away the weapons. Because you're not going to take the weapons away from the bad guys. Put them in the hands of the good guys. And my clock is not.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, and we're here with our very special guest, Mr. Michael Badnarik. And this, just so everybody knows, I'm kind of bushwhacking Michael here. This is not something that I've talked to him about before. I've touched on the subject with him, but I haven't really went into it. I'm going to ask Michael to give commentary on what we've been promoting here on the air in terms of legal remedy. For the first few years of doing the show, the primary thrust of the show was to get away from the patriot mythology and move toward the corpus juris, the body of law, the consistent application of the body of law, especially as that body of law affected the duties and responsibilities of our public officials. Because it's always been our purpose to put our public officials in a position such that they had little rational or reasonable alternative but to follow the code as it's written. And in the process of working with this a few years, we've worked out some ways of thinking about it, and the primary thing that has changed over the years is our focus on politics. Most of those of us who are legal researchers, we don't really have much use for politics. And when I began researching this, I did it from the perspective of an engineer. And as far as I was concerned, the statutes and codes were a tech manual. And I opened the tech manual and I followed the steps. But then we looked at what was actually going on, and it seemed as though our public officials read a different tech manual than I did, because nothing was done the way the code seemed to say it was supposed to be done. And clearly something was wrong. And I came across a fellow named Ken Magnuson, and he had these 4 rules. That perception is everything. Everything is negotiable. And everything is political. And it turned out that everything is political was absolutely key to understanding how to bring our public officials to task. Now, you or I, as a singular individual, it's hard for us to imagine, especially if you're in Texas, you're one of 25 million. So how on earth could just one singular solitary individual with no special power or authority affect the whole system? Well, it turns out we can. And one of the reasons we can is most everybody can't imagine how one person could affect the whole system. So they tend not to try. And when they think about affecting the system, it seems like a daunting task. And I believe a lot of the reason is perspective. It's how we think about it. Everything's political. If you go into court, you have to expect that the court is going to rule against you out of hand at every turn, without regard to the right of things or the rule of law. Now, that may not be right, but you'll find if you act as if it is right, that it works very well. When you step into a courtroom, you can expect the judge to rule against you out of hand at every turn. When I go in, that's what I expect, and I don't care. Judge can rule what everyone wants to. My only purpose in that courtroom is to set the record for appeal. And the judge's only responsibility and his duty in the courtroom is to determine the facts in accordance with the rules of evidence, then apply the law as it comes to him to the facts in the case. If he has another agenda, that triggers a responsibility that I have. I once swore on my oath that I'd protect this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when I mustered out of the military, it was made very clear to me that I was not released from that oath, that it was a lifetime oath. Well, I found an enemy, and he is domestic. And the fight is on. Now, this enemy is not necessarily an intentional enemy. It's only secondarily personified in an individual. The real enemy is apathy and disregard and distraction. When I tell everybody, when I walk into a courthouse, I am the baddest motor scooter in the building. And there is only one reason I'm the baddest motor scooter in the building, and I think Michael will back this up 100%. The only reason I'm the baddest motor scooter in the building is I'm nobody. I'm not a judge. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not a bailiff, a court clerk. I'm not any of those things. They're all public fish. They're all public servants. Me? I am the master. They're the servants, and I'm the master of those servants. I come into the courthouse to address an issue that I have, and I have engaged a judge. I've engaged that judge for the purpose of determining the facts in accordance with the rules of evidence, applying the law as it comes to him with the facts of the case. If he has himself another agenda, then that activates my duty as the master of the servant. And I will give him a romp through the legal system he will not believe, because I'm the one who can do that. Lawyers certainly can't, because that lawyer comes before that judge dangling by his bar card. I'm not dangling by anything. I just had a case removed from the state court to the federal court here in Fort Worth. And it was assigned to Judge McBride. Judge McBride's a 98-year-old federal judge. He may be 99 by now, and he is a real cantankerous stinker. He is very well known for his bad attitude and his capricious and arbitrary manner. Well, I'm looking forward to Judge McBride. Judge McBride, you want to have yourself an attitude? I'll see if I can't get it adjusted for you. And I can do that because I am the master of the servants. Michael, your opinion?
Oh, I agree. They are elected for the explicit purpose of protecting and defending the Constitution, which means that they have taken an oath to protect our life, liberty, and private property. My first action usually is to ask them if they have taken this oath, and if they say yes, then I ask them how many articles are in the Constitution, and when they don't know, I ask them how they purport to defend a Constitution that they haven't read, that they don't understand. And it's amazing how quickly they go from, aggressive bad cop attitude to, very passive indeed.
Yes, and, sir, Mr. Badnarik, sir.
It is. I had a circumstance where I almost had the police officer in tears. Not quite, but when I told him that, he was apparently impersonating a police officer, and that quite possibly was guilty of treason, and that I was going to file lawsuits against him and basically have him put in jail. I was able to explain it with enough believability, I guess, that he was genuinely concerned about his job. So one of the things that I think, your listeners, they listen in and they go, wow, Randy's really great, because, Randy appears to have, this will of stone. How do you go into the dragon's den and tweak the dragon's nose?
Okay, hang on, Mike. We're about to go to break. This is Randy Kelton, Michael Badnarik, Rule of Law Radio. Our call-in number, 512.
Ever think about all the things you toss into the garbage and how they might someday be used against you? Well, most of us don't. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. In a moment, I'll tell you why you should.
Google is watching you, recording everything you've ever searched for and creating a massive database of your personal information. That's creepy, but it doesn't have to be that way. Startpage.com is the world's most private search engine. Startpage.com doesn't store your IP address, make a record of your searches, or use tracking cookies, and they're third-party certified. If you don't like Big Brother spying on you, start over with Startpage. Great search results and total privacy. Startpage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Billionaire casino mogul Kirk Kerkorian was perplexed when his much younger wife Lisa turned up expecting. Kerkorian smelled a rat because a few years before, doctors had determined he was medically unable to father a child. He suspected the father was Hollywood producer Stephen Bing, notorious for also fathering actress Liz Hurley's baby. However, to no one's surprise, Bing refused to take a paternity test. So Kerkorian hired an investigator who went fishing about Bing's garbage from the curb outside his house. They hit pay dirt when a used piece of dental floss yielded the DNA evidence linking Bing to the newborn baby. What did you throw away today? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com. Yeah, I got a warrant. And I'm going to serve them. To the head of government, them. Prosecute them. Okay. No, sir. Citizens arrest for Mr. Bush. Citizens arrest for Dick Cheney. Well, I need a prosecutor to come and help me. Prosecute them wicked leader, yeah, you see. Them a murderer, liar, them tell we. Them a liar and tell six stories. Me not believe me say what them tell we. 3% of America vote for Bush.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Roosevelt Radio. And Michael, you were talking about the application of Constitution.
I was merely suggesting that the listeners may not have the same level of tenacity that we do, just because we've had just a little bit more experience at it. But just about anybody can do this. I mean, it really is more about guts than training. We can give you the information that proves that these people, the judges and attorneys, have violated not only the law but their oath of office, etc. But you've got to have the courage to go in and use that information. It doesn't matter how big your gun is. If you're not willing to pull the trigger, it's not going to do any good. So
I've kind of worked up a way to do that. Since we're in Texas, in law, bushwhack is perfectly acceptable. And it's a great way to do things. When I walk into a courtroom in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, pretty much they all know me. All the judges do. If they don't know me, they know who I am. And they don't want to see me in their courtroom. And sometimes the smaller things you do turned out to have the greater effect. We had been filing challenges of subject matter jurisdiction in eviction cases. And we always waited to the last minute to file it because a challenge subject matter jurisdiction can be filed at any time. So I go into court, and a friend of mine, we've got 2 eviction hearings. We're trying to help people stop foreclosure or stop evictions and foreclosures. So David was first. And he goes in, he sits down, and this judge had thrown him in jail 2 or 3 times. Last time he was in court, the judge told him, you say one more, you said that you are not to say a word or you'll be held in contempt. And he said, I object. Bailiff, arrest him. They threw him in jail. So he's sitting up there waiting for his hearing to start. And I had to give David credit. It was gutsy just to go in front of this judge. So while he was sitting up there, I went and stood at the bar. And most of my listeners have probably heard this story. And the judge finally looked up and said, can I help you? And I said, yes, Your Honor. My name's Randy Kelton, and I have hearing deficiency. Well, Mr. Kelton, what's wrong with your hearing? I said, oh, Judge, I was down in Mexico the other day, and I drank too much of that cheap tequila, and I lost my hearing aid. Well, why are you telling me? Well, I lied to him. I had it in my pocket. Well, why are you telling me this? I said, Your Honor, do you have accommodation for the hearing impaired? No, I do not. I see you have a sound system here. Would you turn it up? No, I will not. Well, then will you speak up? And he did. He told the bailiff if I didn't sound shut up, he's thrown me out of the courtroom. So I sat down and shut up. David had his hearing. He called me up. I sat down at the table. They started the hearing. Objection, Your Honor. I'm here at arm's length to the court. I have a challenge subject matter jurisdiction before the court. And the judge said, yes, Mr. Kelton, you just filed that 20 minutes ago. And it's about a 30-page document. I said, yes, Your Honor, I did. Well, I'm going to deny that motion. I said, well, so you're going to deny a challenge subject matter jurisdiction without even reading it? Yes, Mr. Kelton, I am. Well, thank you. We're done here. And I closed my folder, stood up, got to the bar and pointed at the bailiff. You, come with me. I get to the door, and the bailiffs are standing there looking confused, and I turned around and said, well, and one of the bailiffs, okay, and he comes on out. We get outside. He said, Mr. Bailiff, Mr. Kelton, what can I do for you? I said, I need you to arrest the judge. Well, why would I arrest a judge? Class A misdemeanor, official oppression, criminal violation, 3903 Penal Code. In that, he failed to perform a duty he was required to perform, and in the process, denied me the full free access to or enjoyment of a right. The bailiff said, well, Mr. Kelton, what right did he deny you in? He denied me my right to the accommodation under the Hearing Americans with Disabilities Act. And the bailiff said, well, Mr. Kelton, why didn't you tell the judge about the Americans with Disabilities Act? Heck, if I'd have done that, he might have turned the sound up. The bailiff stood there a minute, and this grin started across his face. Why, you set him up. I said, yeah, I did. He was a real sucker for that one, wasn't he? That had more effect than anything else I've ever done. And the point of that story is when you go into court and you invoke the duty of the court, and the court doesn't do what it's required to do, then don't stand there and give legal advice to the court. Now, you put your law and facts before the court as concerns your case, but when the judge acts personally, don't give him legal advice. When a bailiff fails to do what he's required to do, don't give him legal advice. Don't go in there and say, well, I got these rights and I got those rights and you got to do this and you got to do... No, don't do that. They're real accustomed to that and they know how to deal with it. Better to go in there and ask them to do something. Now, I make it a requirement or a policy that I never ask a public official to do anything I actually want them to do. Because I never ask a public official to do anything that the law does not specifically require him to do. And that's because he's the servant and I'm the master. And when I request that he perform a duty, he is required to perform the duty. And when he doesn't perform that duty, I'm not going to stand there and argue with him. I'm the master. He's the servant. I don't argue with my servants. When I leave the courtroom, then I'll go to the grand jury and ask the grand jury to indict him, and he can explain it to a grand jury. Or I'll prepare a criminal affidavit and file it with the local Texas Ranger, like I just did with my local district judge, for threatening to arrest me in the courtroom when I challenged him for not giving me opportunity to challenge the grand jury pool as authorized under 16.27 Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. He had never heard of it before. Never heard of it being done before. His problem, not my problem. My problem is the statute authorized me to do that. He impaneled the grand jury without giving me opportunity. When I questioned about it, he threatened to have me arrested, and a bailiff put his hand on my arm. And when the bailiff put his hand on my arm, I looked down and I said, Mr. Bailiff, I see that you are prominently displaying a deadly weapon. Yes, Mr. Kelton, I am. Tell me, Mr. Bailiff, is that pistol loaded? Yes, Mr. Kelton, it is. And then the judge stepped in. That's okay, Mr. Bailiff, you can step back. Sorry, Bubba, too late. That bell's already been rung. What the Texas Penal Code says, if someone commits simple assault, offensive touching, or offensive language, and he is prominently displaying a deadly weapon, that's a second-degree felony in the state of Texas, unless he is a public official acting under the color of an official capacity, in which case it's a felony of the first degree. So I charged the district judge with committing first-degree felony aggravated assault against me by assaulting me with the bailiff. And I gave it to our local Texas Ranger. And he is going to be a real unhappy camper. We just got new law recently. It went in last September that took the Public Integrity Unit away from prosecuting attorneys and gave the duty to investigate public officials to the Texas Rangers, and they were required to come up with protocols. And they came up with protocols that violate law, and I'll explain that when I come back and explain why I'll be filing criminal charges against the Texas Ranger. This is so much fun. Hang on, Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio. Our call-in number, 512-646-1984. We'll wait a couple segments before we open the phone lines. So hang on, we'll be right back.
Easy.
For when I'm hungry, I like to know just what I'm fishing for. I ain't asking for much, I ain't trying to be no glutton.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, here with our special guest, Mr. Michael Badnarik. And what I was doing here is I'm setting up the Texas Ranger. And this is something anybody can do. And you don't have to confront them directly. When the judge had the bailiff threaten me with arrest and put his hand on my arm, I didn't tell the judge that was incorrect. I didn't tell the judge that was illegal. I didn't give him legal advice. If he wants legal advice, let him go talk to the prosecuting attorney and get his legal advice. I'm not his lawyer. I'm his master. I'm here to invoke his duty. He can either do his duty or not. And I've told a number of public officials this. I think I told one in front of you at one time, Robert, that life is filled with little decisions. We all get to make some. Your turn. You can either follow law and arrest this. I think that was the district judge. I was trying to get him to arrest in Williamson County. Or you can save your job and shield the judge from prosecution in violation of 3805 Penal Code. It's your call. And I don't care what they do. And that's the idea. When you go into court, you ask them to do what the law requires them to do. And you really kind of hope they don't. Because if they don't, you get to go away and then sting them good from somewhere else. This judge threatened to have me arrested and had an armed bailiff put his hand on my arm in order to prevent me from exercising a right. And the reason the judge stopped the bailiff is he could tell that I was trying to keep from grinning. And all these warning bells went off and said, wait a minute, this guy's setting you up again. I set him up once before. And the judge saw it coming, so that's why he stopped the bailiff. Sorry, Bubba, too late. So I went to our local Texas Ranger, and the Rangers were required to set up a set of protocols, and those protocols require the ranger to get permission from the prosecuting attorney to investigate a public official. Well, it's my position that a prosecuting attorney has no discretion concerning a complaint against a public official, because the code says when a prosecuting attorney is made known in any manner that a public official has violated law relating to his office, he shall reduce complaint and information submitted to the grand jury. No discretion. So for the Rangers to have to go to a prosecutor and ask his permission to investigate a public official, that prosecutor has no power to grant or deny. He has no power to have anything to do with it. So I called the ranger and told him I'd be filing criminal charges against the district judge. What are you going to do with it? He said, well, I'm going to take it to the district attorney, and if the district attorney gives me permission, then I'll investigate it. Oh, and if the prosecuting attorney doesn't give you permission, what are you going to do then? Well, I'm not going to do anything with it. Oh, okay, that'll work. So I went down and personally delivered a verified criminal affidavit against the district judge accusing him of first-degree felony aggravated assault. It's been about 3 weeks. I haven't heard anything back. So I want to give him about 30 days. And then I'm going to go to the district clerk and ask the district clerk to show me any complaints against the district judge that have been forwarded to the court by some magistrate after an examining trial under Chapter 16, which requires the magistrate after the examining trial under 17.30 to seal all documents had in the hearing, cause his name to be written across the seal of the envelope and forwarded to the clerk of court of jurisdiction. Since the Texas Ranger is a certified peace officer in the state of Texas and is employed in that capacity when he's made known that a crime has been committed under 2.13, he's required to reduce complaint information, submit it to some magistrate. Magistrate's required to hold an examining trial, seal all the documents, send it to the clerk. So I'm going to go to the clerk and see if she's got a complaint from the district judge. So it doesn't matter in an examining trial whether he finds probable cause or not. He's to seal all the documents anyway and send them to the clerk. And when the clerk doesn't have it, then I'll go file criminal charges against the Texas Ranger with the grand jury. And the Ranger is going to go to likely to get a call from somebody investigating him. And what's he going to say? Oh, I followed policy. But that's not the question. The question is, did you fail to present this verified criminal complaint to some magistrate the way the statute requires you to do? My favorite kind of complaint to file against a public official is a complaint accusing the official of following policy. Now let that ranger go to the guys who put together this policy and have them explain why this guy's out here trying to get him indicted. The ranger's never seen me. And it'll work better if he never sees me. When you file these complaints, it's better if you do it by mail so nobody ever sees you. You're sharpshooting them. They don't know who they're dealing with. Everything is political. When I file against the ranger, every Texas ranger in the state of Texas is going to find out about it. New protocols, ranger followed the protocols. Now somebody's trying to get him indicted. Who's going to come in and save me from indictment? Who's going to preserve my career for following your protocols? I can't find any code that authorizes a public official to follow a protocol that violates the law. Are you familiar with anything like that, Michael?
No, I mean, they do that on a semi-regular basis, but they're never going to admit it, at least not in writing, because, their job is to, follow the law. And they've got most people buffaloed into thinking that that's exactly what they're doing. But they're not.
And it's our job. We are the masters. It's our job when they step across one of our legal lines is to call them on it. And the more minor the complaint, the better. I don't want to ruin this ranger's career. I don't want to do him any harm. But we don't always get what we want. And in that perspective, I don't want to wait until the ranger does something horrible. I want to sting him the first time he steps across a legal line. The smaller, the better. That'll make him more reluctant to step across a bigger one. We do this show, we get these people calling in with all these horrible things they do. We've got someone who'll call in tonight who, over a traffic ticket, a police officer took out his billy club and smashed in this guy's window because the person was asking for probable cause. Now, this could well cost the officer his job. This could get him put in prison. He put that. The officer didn't know that Scott had his video camera on. It was slightly hidden. He put the video on the internet and got 1.8 hits. This policeman could lose his job for doing what he's been trained to do. Never what I want to happen. I want to sting him over something minor so he doesn't do something bigger. It's easier, it's less threatening to sting him over something minor. And what is most threatening is when they feel like you set them up. And I outright told this ranger that I was setting him up. Ranger Hal, I am sorry that you're the one that stepped into this mess, but I didn't pick you. You were there. Sorry, I'm going to have to do it to you. Nothing personal. Life is tough. But I'm going to sting his career over something that he feels like he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. But we have Screws v. U.S. And Screws v. U.S. says that while a private citizen cannot claim ignorance of the law as a defense to prosecution, a public official is held to a much higher standard. If a public official violates a ruling of this court, and he be sane, he may not be heard to say he knows not what he does. So you're going to strap that pistol on your hip and you're going to assume that authority. You need to be well aware of the requirements of that authority. Don't come crying to me because I give notice that you breached it. You're the servant. I'm the master. You are to follow my law. And I really don't care what your opinion about it is. This has been the most effective tactic we can find. We have a number of people doing it. We've opened up the grand jury. Now, we're about to go to break. I'll explain how we've done that on the other side. And it's using their own law. We just read the code and follow the code the way it's written. We read the Constitution and hold them to it. Might like to hear their opinion, but as to the prosecution, it's not relevant. Okay, about to go to break. Randy Kelton, Real Law Radio. Our call-in number 512-646-1984. After this next segment, I'm going to open the phone lines. So hang in there. We'll be taking your calls the rest of the night. We'll be right back.
It's all according to the will of the Almighty. I read his book and it says he cares not for the unsightly.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Real Radio here with Michael Bednarik, and on the show we were talking about a little experience in Williamson County where it was part of my learning experience. This was before I learned enough not to do this directly in front of them, but to use bushwhack. And in this case, I kind of got in their faces. Michael, do you want to tell that story?
I love this story. I was invited. I was living in Texas here in Austin, and Deborah called, and she said that you and she were going to go up to Williamson County, and you were going to be filing this paperwork against the district attorney, or again, well, I guess we were going to file paperwork against a police officer, and she's telling me all this stuff, and I'm going, yeah, you go, sister. I'm just like giving them all sorts of moral support. And she said, well, we want you to come too. And for those who don't know, Williamson County is the epitome of the good old boy network. And there are people literally who will circumvent Williamson County so they don't have to drive through it. So
that's Alex Jones is one of them.
Yeah. I don't know if Alex does or not, but it's not a place that you want to get pulled over. So anyway, Deborah is telling me that, she wants me to go along. And, well, I really didn't want to because Williamson County has such a famous reputation. But she kind of, she was going. And I couldn't very well hold my head up high knowing that Deborah was brave enough to go and think, it's like, well, okay, I mean, how bad can it be? So we were all driving up in your truck, and you were explaining to us that when they get the drug war, they get the guy who buys a couple ounces of marijuana, and they don't really care about him, but they threaten him with a bunch of jail time so that he will give them the names of, the bigger dealers, and that way they can move it up the chain. And so this is basically a similar strategy. We file a little complaint against one of the police officers, and we're not really aiming for the police officer, but when the district attorney doesn't follow the rules, then we can file, paperwork against the district attorney. So, okay, I'm listening to all this, and we get there, and I think we had a camera with us, too. There was a TV camera going along. I don't remember what that was all about.
Yeah, we had a camera crew.
So we go upstairs to the district attorney's office, and we explain that we have this paperwork we want to give to the district attorney. Well, one of the detectives came to speak to us. And the detective is, well-dressed, shirt and tie, and a shoulder holster, his badge on his belt and all this. And the detective leads us into this small waiting room. And, Randy's explaining that we have this paperwork against the police officer. We want the detective to take it to the district attorney and have it filed. And the detective said, well, I can't do that. And Randy knows the Texas statutes the way I know the Constitution. And he's rattling off this statute and that statute and explaining to the detective that he has no discretion in this case. That the law says that when he is given a complaint, that he will sign it and take it to the district attorney. That's his job. So the detective said, well, let me go talk to So he goes to talk to the district attorney, and we're sitting in the waiting room and waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally I'm thinking, it's been a long time. It's been 30, 45 minutes. I mean, I'm getting a little bit nervous. So the detective comes back, hands Randy the paper, and says, we've decided to decline your offer. And Randy says, okay. And he jumps up, pulls his cell phone out of his pocket, and dials 911. He says, I need 2 sheriff's deputies at the district attorney's office. And the detective is stunned. And Randy is continuing going, yes, I want these deputies to come and arrest the district attorney. And he says, and also the detective, and he turns to the detective and says, what's your name? The detective turned white. I mean, he's got this badge and a gun, and here's this man standing in front of him talking to somebody on the phone saying that he wants to arrest him. And it was, about 3 minutes later, the 2 sheriff's deputies come running up the stairs. Well, they don't come to talk to us. We were the ones that called. But they go running down the hall to the district attorney's office. And when they come back a couple minutes later, They escort us out of the office, let us know that we are no longer welcome to sit in the office. And Randy's explaining that, well, we've got this paperwork. We want you to arrest the district attorney. And they go, not going to happen. You know, you're smoking something. Get out of here, and we're just not going to happen. So then we go downstairs to the lobby, and I'm thinking, well, okay, that was interesting. Time to go home. And Randy says, okay, what I need is a district judge. I go, what? It's like, yeah, we need to file paperwork against the district attorney with the district judge. And Randy says, I need a volunteer. Now, at that particular moment, I was standing shoulder to shoulder with Deborah, who's standing there looking really wonderful. She's got a blouse and a skirt on and high heels. And I took a step backwards, just like in the movies. I wanted it to look like Deborah had volunteered because I figured, she's too pretty. They're not going to beat her up. And Randy points at me and says, Michael, here. And he gives me a tablet of paper and a pencil. He says, take notes, look important. And we start running to go look for a district judge's office. Well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I mean, I'm not going to let Randy go on his own, but I'm not really sure. We're going into the Dragon's Den, and I sure would like some armor and big sword. So we go into the district judge's office, and we're talking to the secretary. Randy's explaining to her that she needs to give this paperwork to the district judge and have the district judge sign it and all this stuff. And again, quoting many of the Texas statutes and, sounding very important. So the secretary says, well, just a minute. I'm going to go see what he says. So she goes into the district judge's office, and we're sitting in the district judge's office where the secretary is. And I'm just nervous. I am deep in the bowels of the Williamson County court system, and I don't like it a whole lot. All of a sudden, we hear footsteps running down the hall, running. And in a few seconds later, the two sheriff's deputies that we had seen upstairs a few minutes ago come running around the corner. And Randy says, oh, we're glad to see you. And I'm thinking, we are? Why are we glad? And Randy says, well, we want you to go in and arrest the district judge. And the sheriff's deputies are just stunned. They've never heard that sentence before. And it's like, what? Well, the younger deputy goes into the judge's office, and the older deputy, and I don't know if he was a sergeant, I don't know how to count all the stripes, but he was obviously a veteran of the force, had been there for many years, and was smart enough not to go tiptoeing through a minefield, and clever enough to actually listen to Randy's explanation of what was going on. And I think that the older deputy was starting to understand and starting to buy into all of this when the younger guy comes out and they said, look, you may be right, but we're not going to arrest a district judge. I mean, that is a career limiting move that we're just not willing to take. And so while we may empathize with your position and we may see some logic and merit to the conversation, you're going to have to go and file your paperwork someplace else. So now we're getting ready to leave, and I'm breathing a sigh of relief. I can't get out of this building fast enough. As we're walking back to the door, two local police officers, these are Williamson, they're not Williamson County, they're local police. They come running down the hall, and they basically grab Randy and I and escort us into a interrogation room. And they shove Randy and I in. Randy and I are by the wall. Now you've got two regular police officers and two big burly sheriff's deputies standing between me and the door. And I am very conscious of the fact that I'm unarmed. It's like, oh no. And so they are starting to interrogate Randy. And they're being very aggressive. And I could tell this whole thing was choreographed. And they start poking Randy in the chest. And as Randy, starts to squirm to defend himself against all this chest poking, they grab Randy, slam him down to the table, and start to handcuff him. And they accuse Randy of assaulting the police officers, which is absolutely a ludicrous statement because the police officers were clearly assaulting Randy. And Randy was just just like I said, responding to the attack. So they are arresting Randy. They're putting handcuffs on him. And one of the police officers looks at me and says, "You're a witness to a crime." And my response was, "Yes, I am." Now, I don't think that the police officer and I thought about the same crime. I think he was, telling me that I was a witness to Randy's crime, but clearly I was a witness to the police officer's crime. I mean, they had no call whatsoever to be manhandling Randy. And Randy's smiling. He's going along with the whole thing. And they are now taking Randy off in handcuffs. The TV camera is there, and everybody's going, "What happened? What's going on? Why is Randy in handcuffs? Why are they putting him in a police car?" And they want me to explain all of this on camera. And I said, "No, I'm not going to say anything, not at this point, because Randy's in jail. I'm not sure what details may hinder whatever legal action comes next. So, yes, I am a witness. I have all my information, but I'm going to save it for the appropriate time." Okay, we'll come back to this right after the commercial.
Okay, this is Randy Kelton, Real Law Radio. We'll be right back.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Ain't gonna blind me. Don't bore me. Well, ain't gonna fool me with that same old trick again. I was blindsided, but now I can see your plan. You put the fear in my pocket.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Real Law Radio, here with Michael Van Erich. And Mike was finishing up the story of the great Williamson County escapade.
Well, we had been there, and fortunately, Deborah was farsighted enough to get your truck keys before you and I had ventured off towards the judge's office. And so after you got, tossed into the police car and taken away, Deborah was able to drive the truck home. And here we are, we're coming home without Randy. Well, we were nervous about you, and we're trying to figure out what we were going to do. Well, the next morning, Deborah called and said, "We're going back to Williamson County. They're letting Randy out of jail. We got to go pick up Randy." So, yeah, I want to see the conclusion of all this. So I jump in the truck. We drive up to Williamson County, and we're in the, lobby at the police station, and they were throwing Randy out of jail. They were trying to get rid of him so fast. Now, Randy had applied paperwork in Wise County and had tormented the judges and attorneys and police officers there to the point where they were afraid of the name Kelton. I guess Williamson County didn't know about Randy yet. Well, overnight, while Randy was in jail, Williamson County apparently contacted Wise County, and Wise County said, "Get him out of the building. You do not want to make Randy Kelton mad." And so when Deborah and I show up to pick Randy up, the sheriff's deputies are going, "Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Kelton. I had no idea that you were in jail. Can I get your bottle of water, Mr. Kelton? Let me remind you that I had nothing to do with putting you in jail, Mr. Kelton. And I'm really sorry that this happened to you. That's a really terrible thing. But it wasn't my fault, Mr. Kelton." And they were so deferential. I think that if Randy had held out his finger with a ring, they would have kissed it. It was amazing to me to be there at both ends, to see on the night before where these two police officers, they were literally like Gestapo agents. They were aggressive, they were mean, they were unfriendly, and Randy was terribly submissive. He just kind of went along with it and didn't give them a reason to be any more aggressive than they already were. But once they found out that Randy was really, really good at paperwork and putting judges and lawyers and police officers in the spotlight, so to speak, their attitude changed completely. So I guess the moral of this story is that, yes, we have to stand up for our rights. Yes, it's going to require a little bit of education and training on your part. And yes, there are some times when you may actually be put in jail for a short period of time. But it's not fatal. It's a little uncomfortable, and it gives you an opportunity. It gives you more excuse to file more paperwork against these people. And unless we make their lives miserable, they're not going to stop doing what they're doing. And the general idea that Randy and I want to talk about tonight is that we are beginning to win. There are enough people that are going into court. We are throwing so much paperwork at the judges and lawyers and police officers that they are now starting to feel the pressure. And if we can keep it up and teach more people to do this, then we will eventually win, because we have the law and logic on our side. I'm done. But that's one of my favorite, Randy Kelton story.
I just turned on the phone line, so if anybody has a question or comment, give us a call, 512-646-1984. And what the main thing that came out of that, and a subsequent visit to Williamson County, it indicates that the more corrupt a county is, the more afraid of you they are. Deborah and I went back to Williamson County. I'm sorry, Deborah wasn't with me the second time. I went back actually she was with me one time. We went back, and there was a guy that was arrested for having 2 prescription drugs in an aspirin bottle. And after the arrest, he brought them the prescriptions for the drugs, but they're still prosecuting. So I went down there with him and one other person, and I told him, if anybody asks, you don't know me, we're not together. So I went in, and they went to talk to the prosecutor, and I went to the county clerk and asked to see the criminal complaint. Or I asked to see the file first, and I looked in the file, and there was no criminal complaint. And I called the clerk over and asked, where's the criminal complaint? Well, we don't get that. Well, how do you initiate a criminal prosecution if there's no criminal accusation? Well, we don't know. This is all we get. And they had a little sign up on the wall that said it's a crime to tamper with a government document. And I said, you see that sign up there? It's a crime to tamper with a government document. Someone has secreted this criminal complaint from you, because when someone's arrested, they're required to be taken before a magistrate. The magistrate's required to hold a hearing and then seal all the documents in an envelope, put his name, cause his name to be written across the seal of the envelope, and forward it to you. Where is it? Well, I don't know. Who has it? I don't know. Well, who might have it? Well, the prosecuting attorney might have it. So I went to the prosecuting attorney's office and asked them for it. And they didn't know what I was talking about. So I made out an information request demanding, under the Open Records Act, demanding all records collected, assembled, and maintained by the department that are specifically referenced by Article 17.30. And I put in a date span 2 days before and 2 days after this particular arrest. Well, then I went to the court, and they were having this cattle call hearings where they're taking pleas, and I went and sat down in the courtroom. And I'm in a nice suit and tie, and I sat down, I'm taking notes. And I asked the bailiff where I could get a copy of the docket sheet, and he told me I could get it downstairs. So I'm sitting here watching what's going on, taking notes. Nobody knows who I am. So this young prosecutor came over, and he said, sir, and I looked up at him, and I said, yes. Do you have a case here today? Oh, no, nothing like that. I go back to writing. He stands there a minute. Sir, and I look up, yes. Do you have a civil case in this court? Oh, no, nothing like that. And I turn back and go back to writing. He stands there a minute, and then he says, sir, and I look up at him, hold up both hands with my palms out. No more questions. You'd have thought I slapped him. But he stood there a minute, and I went back to writing, and he kind of shuffled around a little to the left. Then an older guy came and leaned over the bar and said, sir, and I said, yes. He said, I'm the prosecuting attorney. Is there something I can do for you? No. And I went back to writing. He said, well, you can get a docket sheet downstairs. I said, the bailiff told me, thank you. And I go back to writing. I left there, and Doug, the one who was there to try to get his charges dropped, he said, what did you do? Well, nothing. He said, they came to me and said, there's somebody in the courtroom. You here with somebody else? Oh, no, just us. Well, somebody here going through your record. And Doug told him, I told you I had a top secret clearance, and you were going to screw that up, so now they think I'm a Fed. They dismissed his case, took him down to the clerk, and filled out a paper so he could get his bond money back, and actually took him to the judge and got the judge to sign the dismissal order. He came to one of my seminars. I was doing a little presentation to Brave New Books, and he said, have you ever walked into a room and turned the lights on and watched the cockroaches scatter? He said that's what it looked like. And what happened was, is they all looked in their deepest, darkest closet at their most horrible skeleton, and they knew I knew exactly what it was. The more corrupt they are, the more afraid they are. Randy Kelton, Real Law Radio. We'll be right back.
Here in the U.S., you can name your child pretty much anything you want, but creative naming and weird spelling won't fly in other parts of the world. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back in just a moment with some surprising laws about baby names.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Is it a girl or a boy? In Denmark and Germany, you should be able to tell by the baby's name. It's the law. For example, the name Matti is verboten in Germany because it could cause gender confusion. Several countries won't allow names considered harmful to a child's self-image. The names Adolf Hitler and Satan are banned in New Zealand, which might be understandable. But fans of the king of rock and roll might wonder why the name Elvis has been rejected in Sweden. What's not surprising is that Chinese baby naming laws reflect the country's control agenda. Parents must give newborns names that can be easily scanned by a computer for the country's national ID card program. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Chemtrails.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Real Law Radio. And that story kind of goes to show why it's best to bushwhack. Because they know they're doing it wrong. Every police officer that I know personally and who will talk to me has said the same thing. They go into police work because they want to be the good guys. And they get into police work and find it's not anything like they thought it was. They know the system is a horrible mess. They didn't create the mess. But once they got into it, their career is committed to it. So they're stuck with it. I once had a prosecutor. I was crawling down his throat, and this was in Wise County. He said, "One moment, Mr. Kelton." He got up, he walked past me, closed his office door, came back, sat down, and he said, "Now, if you tell this, I will deny it, but don't stop." He said he was a prosecutor for Tarrant County for 5 years, and he just could not do it anymore. He said, "I could not get up in the morning and look in the mirror and like what I saw looking back at me." He said, "You may be the only one who can do this, so don't stop." He got up, went back, opened the door, and we went back to arguing like cats and dogs. Okay, we do have a bunch of callers. The call board is lit up, and we have a first-time caller, so I'm going to go to Lisa in Texas. Hello, Lisa. What do you have for us today?
Yes, I have a question concerning a simple will and a beneficiary. I went to a lawyer with my lover to draw up a simple will as to be her beneficiary because she had been put in a nursing home and we don't know how much longer she's going to live. And many complications have happened since that, where I am now being informed that I'm being investigated by a lawyer, all of which I didn't know for the last 3 months now.
Okay. On the will, this was your lover's will that you were filing?
Yes.
Was your lover deemed to be essentially incompetent at the time you filed the will?
No, and I took in a letter from her doctor from the nursing home saying from the doctor that she had not been deemed incompetent and that she was able to go ahead and go forth with talking to legal attorneys to file a will and to carry out her wishes.
So if essentially you were a courier in filing the will, that you weren't a party to the will, I mean, you may have been named in it, but you weren't a party because she's the party. Did she verify the will before a notary or before two independent witnesses?
Yes.
Okay, then do you know who's investigating you?
I don't know who's investigating me other than, can I just give you a little bit of a background quickly?
Yes.
I went to this first lawyer that I just spoke about and to get this will, and he never returned our calls, no matter what. So after about the fourth call, I finally went in.
Okay, hold on. Stop a second. Did you pay this lawyer?
No.
Okay.
No. So we went in. I went in to say, why haven't I heard from you? He said there had been a lot of sickness in the firm, and that he had done nothing about anything. So we decided that we wanted to go to a second lawyer and not retain his services. That is at the point 3 months later down the line now, after talking with this second lawyer, that we have found out that it appears perhaps that this first lawyer went to the judge and told him that he had reasons, suspicions, of which I don't know what those are, in order to go to this judge. And then from that judge, another court-appointed attorney was appointed to come out and subpoena me for records on all of my expenditures.
Okay, hold on.
Everything.
Hold on. You said went to the judge. What did this judge have to do with anything?
I don't know, other than I was told that a judge was now involved and that this judge had subpoenaed another court-appointed attorney to see about overriding my guardian ad litem.
Okay, you had a guardian ad litem. Who appointed you as guardian ad litem?
My lover.
Okay.
Under the guise of the second lawyer.
You need to file a motion with the court demanding the complaint against you.
Okay.
You need to see what was filed, and if this lawyer filed it, you need to bar grieve him immediately. Unless, I shouldn't pick on lawyers too much. He didn't take the case. And it may well be that he had a legitimate concern. And before we start picking on our public officials, sometimes they do the right things for the right reason. You're saying you're lovers, so I'm assuming this is a female. So you're not husband and wife.
We are not husband and wife or married.
So the lawyer, he doesn't know for certain that you actually have a viable legal relationship. So he may be thinking, I don't know if this person has anything to do with this woman. She may just know that this woman is sick and come in here and trying to sneak a will in. I'm trying to look at both sides before we decide that these guys are bad guys. It may well be that the lawyer's doing what he believes is right. So it may be best to ask the judge to hold an evidentiary hearing on your right to be an ad litem.
Okay.
And then ask them to bring up whatever issues or questions they have, because they may have some legitimate questions. And then you can answer those and this issue go away. I can show you how to start a big fight, but this is not really about you. It's about your lover, and it's about what's best for her. And sometimes we have to bite our lip and just be more concerned about your lover getting the outcome that she would have wanted. Even though they may have hurt your feelings and make you feel like you're being persecuted, it could well be that that's not the case.
Well, they are speaking about wanting to take her house, her car, of which is our house.
Okay, hold on. You're using pronouns and adverbs, and I hate those because I don't know who they is referring to.
Okay.
Did it have a new ad litem?
The second court-appointed attorney from the judge has said that they may want to take the house and all the money and her car away from me, of which we live together, and use these as they deem necessary.
This is often the case when someone's put into a convalescent home. They don't have a way to pay for the services.
Well, she does have a way to pay.
Pardon me?
She does have a way to pay in these instances. She has the money to pay.
Ooh.
Then
that should get ugly, because now this is a common scam on the part of lawyers and courts. People get old and they get infirm, and these no-good scoundrels come in and swallow everything they have. This is a really major issue in Florida because it's a retirement state. They have a whole scam where they take you end your life absolutely bankrupt because the lawyers and courts steal everything you have. In that case, do you have a lawyer? You might consider a lawyer in your behalf, but before you do that, you really need to do your homework. I'm trying to think. Are you still the ad litem?
Well, you know, karma is lurking around the corner. You better watch every step you take. And good will follow you.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Louisville Radio, and I kind of ran off the cliff there. And Lisa, I don't see you on the line. If your call has dropped, call us back. We've lost you there. Or if we've given you enough, if you're still listening, first thing you want to do is do your homework. You want to look at everything that's been filed in the court record. And especially you want to see the justification for swallowing your lover's possessions. So if you dropped off, give us a call back. If not, check everything that's in the court record and then call us back next week. Okay, now we're going to go to Scott in Texas. Hello, Scott. Oh, somebody didn't. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, now you're unmuted. The button didn't take. Go ahead.
Dang it, boy. Well, anyhow, I just want to let everybody know out there that we are winning. And I got a couple of stories that are really good. There's one here in Texas, in Garland, Texas, and another one in Boulder, Colorado. So I've been driving around with my tags expired and not even on my car now. In fact, I scraped them off. I don't even drive around with tags anymore. Cops pass me. They just kind of keep going because about a week or so ago, I went to court for the tags expired. Sent in a motion, subject matter jurisdiction, stated everything in the Constitution and Texas state law. And the city attorney had to hang his hat and admit that it wasn't worth their fight because they knew I'd already indicted a judge, already indicted cops because they smashed out all that other stuff. But anyhow, the thing is, people have the power to start turning the actual law back on these people. All you have to do is just stand up and use what you have in your own discretion. And once people start realizing all this stuff, it's going to be a much better place. But we have the duty to put these corrupt judges back in their place. And so once we take the mindset to be able to go in there and do this, it's not that hard. It's just a matter of changing the way you feel, and I don't know. I got to stop. Interject for a minute. I'm too hypered up.
Okay, what about the Colorado issue?
Okay, now I had a buddy of mine because I've been telling him about all this stuff and everything, and he took his tags off and went before a judge, and the judge asked him, did he want a trial by judge or trial by jury? He said, we want a trial by jury. The judge cleared out the courtroom and asked him, why did he want a trial by jury? He said, Judge, I have a right to travel. It's a constitutional right. He was able to dig up some Colorado statutes and cite a little bit of state law, but he confronted them on that. The judge actually admitted you do have a right to travel. He didn't want everybody to know. That's why he cleared out the courtroom. And then he had his case dismissed, just like I had my case dismissed with the city attorney. He admitted he had no case, and he didn't want to fight it. And all I had to do was just stand up and he knew I was going to drive around without my tags on my car. cops follow me. If they pull up my plates, they know that they got a bear fight coming on their hands, because I will take them to court, unlike other people that just don't do it. If you stand up and you take them to court, you file the motion, you listen to Randy, y'all will be empowered and be able to do everything that he does and not back down on anything. And my friend Calvarado, he couldn't believe he won, and he's just so empowered now. Hell, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and Scott is the one who the judge shouted him down in court when he brought up the right to travel issue. So he went and filed a criminal charge against the judge with the grand jury. And he filed it in Tarrant County instead of Dallas County because it occurred in Dallas County. And the foreman of the grand jury sent him a letter saying that we find no crimes subject to, and no Tarrant County crimes subject to indictment. So now we're going to go back and he's going to file criminal charges against the foreman of the grand jury, because 20.09 says the grand jury shall investigate into all crimes subject to indictment that come to their knowledge by way of any member of the grand jury, by way of the prosecuting attorney, or any credible person. So the question is, what part of all crimes was hard for the foreman to understand? This is an issue that I've been raising. When a district judge impanels a grand jury, the district judge has a venue restriction. The district judge is a state judge. But since we got enough population and enough judges, we no longer have circuit judges. Now we have judges in specific districts, and their venue is restricted to the district. But there's nothing in law restricting the venue of a grand jury. So the grand jury is claiming a venue restriction, or they're acting as if there is one, but there's not one in law. So we go back and file against the foreman. Now we know that either the prosecutor or district judge who impaneled the grand jury advised him to act in that regard. And here's the problem. Whoever advised the grand jury was not acting in a judicial capacity. They were acting as a lawyer giving legal advice. And there is no immunity when you're giving legal advice. So we nail the foreman and let the foreman throw whoever gave him that advice under the bus. And then we get to, if it was the judge, we get to sue the judge, and there's no immunity from that. So we'll go back and hammer them. We're working on getting the grand juries completely open. And in the next legislative session, we're going to try to get legislation proposed as an addition to 20.09, Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, that will require the grand jury to sit at least once a month for the purpose of hearing criminal complaints by private citizens.
Ooh.
We get that door opened, it changes everything. It's like we said, we don't want anybody indicted. That's not really the purpose. I mean, sometimes we may if they're really horrible, but we really want to file minor, teensy little things. So we sting them good and let them know they can be indicted, so that when the policeman pulls me over and I have my usual demanding and obnoxious self, and he gets this notion of giving me an attitude adjustment, he may have to consider what is a grand jury of my peers, not his peers, likely to think about what he's considering doing. That could change his behavior considerably. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I just want to let you know that I got another case in Rockwall, and talking about setting these judges up, which is perfect because did a 17.03, I believe, and if I'm citing it correctly tonight. But anyhow, the main focus is the judges do not follow procedure when handling criminal complaints from a civilian versus a cop. And they get to basically get a warrant out for a person with a judge when the cop goes to a person. But when the average person, we the people, and try to indict a cop, not try to indict, but we submit paperwork to indict, it just gets dismissed. But they don't handle the paperwork properly and even do it. It gets back to what you're saying is people take and read the code, and they process it differently than what you process it. I mean, it's a manual. We read the manual. They're not following the manual. Well, the judges aren't following the manual. So,
well, here's something I'd like Michael to chime in on. It is my consideration that when a police officer files a criminal complaint, he does not do that in the capacity of a police officer or a peace officer. He does that in the capacity of a private citizen. We go back to Kennedy v. State that addresses this issue indirectly in addressing prosecuting attorneys. It said, in order to avoid the accumulation of power in any one office for the purpose of filing a criminal complaint, a prosecuting attorney is not a credible person. And a police officer being a part of the executive would amount to the government accusing you and prosecuting you. And Michael, what's the Constitution say about that?
I don't know what it says about that. I'm still trying to, figure out. I don't know that the police officer files the complaint in his private person.
Okay. We fought a revolution to prevent the king from being able to charge you and prosecute you. That's why it was separated, so that any citizen who has knowledge of crime has a duty to report that crime. I can't find anything in law anywhere that gives a police officer any special capacity in that regard.
That makes sense.
So, and when it speaks to crimes, to reporting crime, it has to be reported by a citizen under oath. Okay, hang on. We'll be right back. Oh, we got a little more. Randy Kelton, Real Talk Radio. I'm getting gun shy running off the cliff. Hang on. We'll be right back.